Hey there, welcome back to Procon Grey. Recently I bought the Xreal Air mixed reality glasses, and I think I did an unboxing video here as well as a very detailed review, so do check that out here. But I thought in this I will compare these pretty cool Xreal mixed reality glasses with a couple of VR products that are in the market today. So I'm going to compare these against the Dive VR headset, which I'd also reviewed a while ago. Check that out there. As well as the Meta Quest 2, the Meta Quest Pro, and of course Apple Vision Pro. Gosh, this is so stupid. See, while all these devices have some common functionality, they have some similar features, they exist in wildly different price points. So this, the Dive VR headset, it's about $16, I think. So that's on one end of the spectrum. So starting at $16 goes all the way up to $3,500 with the Apple Vision Pro. How can I compare things that are on such a wide spectrum? Well, here goes. It's still crazy though that for the price of one Apple VR headset, I can buy 9 of these mixed reality glasses, about 11 Meta Quest 2s, and over 200 of these Dive VR headsets. So yeah, clearly pricing is going to be a tough one to make sense of. But let's get started. Let's start by comparing them. Let's start with the similarities between these different devices. What I've put up here is a simple table comparing the similarities of these different devices. Yes, they all can give you a large virtual display to consume your content. They're all fairly portable, some more than others, and we'll talk about that later. You can game on all of them. Again, the catalog of games differ, but you can definitely game on each of them. They all have built-in audio, and they all can support connecting your Bluetooth headsets to get a better audio experience. You can browse the internet, you can use various different applications, again depending on the app ecosystem, but that all works across all these different devices. You can also do some degree of office work. Again, your mileage may vary depending on the devices, but in principle you can do office work on each of them. And of course you can watch 3D content and VR content on all 5. So yeah, on paper, if you exclude the price and maybe the form factor, they seem fairly similar. But now let's get into the differences between these 5, and I think that will help justify the wildly different price points. But still, $3,500, oh gosh. Anyway, so let's start with hardware, and for simplicity I put like a table over here so you can follow along as I talk through these different functions and features. And let me start with portability. Now this wins hands down. These Xreal Air mixed reality glasses are no different to regular glasses. They fit in a nice carrying case that easily carries the USB cable as well as the light shield. And again, it supports any device that you may have with you. So obviously you'll carry your phone with you, so largely those can be connected and you can use it as is. It connects to some laptops, tablets, gaming devices, portable consoles. So again, portability, this by far is the best. I think next and slightly less portable are the Dive VR headsets, because again, it's a little bulkier to carry, but again, this only needs your phone. Slide that in, and yeah, you're good to go. So again, fairly portable as well. Now the Meta Quest 2 and the Meta Quest Pro, and by extension the Apple Vision Pro, are a little bulkier. The Meta Quest 2 is not just bulky because of its overall dimensions, but it also has large controllers that you have to take with you. It can get a little unwieldy to carry around. The Meta Quest Pro is a little smaller, but it's still large. It's still fairly large. And again, you've got the same issue with controllers that you have to carry with you. So I wouldn't call them very comfortable and very portable, but good enough. Apple Vision Pro technically doesn't have controllers because you use gesture controls and eye tracking. It's still a fairly chunky device, and it's also a fairly heavy device. So it's not necessarily very portable, But again, when I do try that, I'll probably report back, which is going to be a long time from now. Oh, also with the Apple Vision Pro, you have the bar brick, which again is quite small, but add that to the items you need to carry with you, it adds a small bit. Now let's look at looks. And again, aesthetics is very subjective, but for me, the Xreal Air is by far the best looking because it's the most natural looking. It's something that I won't be embarrassed to wear when I'm out in public. And it's also fairly comfortable to wear. The next on the looks, if I had to give a ranking, would be the Apple Vision Pro, because it does look pretty cool. I like the idea of the display up front where you can see the person's eyes. So that's definitely a plus. But that's still a fairly bulky device. So I don't know how comfortable I'm going to be wearing that out in public. But again, time will tell. The next maybe category of comparison would be comfort. And here again, I'm leaning towards the Xreal Air just because they're so natural and comfortable to wear. They're really light. If you get the fit right, which is adjusting the arms and adjusting the nose clip, it's actually pretty comfortable to wear. So yeah, this I would say is my favorite. My least favorite is probably the Geodive VR headset. Not because the headset is necessarily heavy, but because I've got a fairly heavy phone, so when I use that in the headset, it gets a little heavy, a little front heavy. It's a bit uncomfortable after a point in time. Now the Meta Quest 2, it is a little heavy, but then because it's fairly balanced and the straps are also quite comfortable, it's not too bad, but I still wouldn't call them comfortable. And I've not tried on the Meta Quest Pro nor the Apple Vision Pro, so I can't speak to that, but I doubt it's going to be necessarily very comfortable. Now another aspect of VR that often gets cited is field of view. For the Meta Quest devices as well as the Apple Vision, I think it's over 100 degrees of field of view, which is pretty good. It's extremely immersive. This, on the other hand, is much low with only like a 50-degree field of view. What that means is you can only see about 50 degrees in front of you versus on the others you'll see like 100 degrees. So it's twice as large in terms of the field of view, that much more immersive. So it's really great for VR content and VR gaming because you're that much more immersed into the environment. However, I'm not convinced it's all that important for content viewing. So here's the thing, right? When you watch content, well, I think the human eye has about a 200 degrees of field of view. What we can focus on and what we actually pay attention to is much smaller. It's probably in that range of 50 degrees. Anything beyond that and you have to move your eye across to really focus on it. So when you're watching content, I think a 50-degree field of view is fairly comfortable. And I've watched a lot of content on these. I've never once felt that, oh gosh, I wish the screen was twice as large or even significantly larger. I was very happy with it. While field of view is important, I would say yes for VR content and an immersive environment, not necessarily for regular content. But very closely linked to field of view is what I like to look at as image quality. And this is also pretty subjective and it can get a little confusing because image quality to me is actually a combination of factors. Now, factors that influence image quality are resolution, field of view, pixels per degree, display technology, and refresh rate. Oh, and brightness. Now look, I'm not going to do a 5x6 matrix and compare these 5 devices across the 6 parameters to figure out what is the best in image quality. That's just nuts. So let me subjectively tell you my point of view. I think of all the devices, the Geodive VR headset has the worst image quality. And that's, again, partly because of the way it works. It uses the phone and the lenses inside the display magnify the phone's image, and it's split across both these screens. So basically, even if your phone is a 1080p or a 2K display, it doesn't use the phone's full screen. It uses a small part of each of the phone screen and magnifies that. So effectively, it brings down the resolution per eye, gives you the screen door effect because you will end up seeing individual pixels. I mean, while it's okay for occasional content viewing, it's terrible when you're trying to read text. And also for prolonged periods of time, I would not recommend these at all. Now for the Meta Quest 2, the resolution is pretty good, and the image quality because of that is fairly alright. But a negative I'll have to say is the pixels per degree is, I think, 18 to 20 pixels per degree, which means it's good enough for content, but it's not good enough for text. So sometimes reading text could be not as sharp as you would like. Also, the Meta Quest devices, both the Quest 2 and the Quest Pro, I think use LCD screens. So the images might not be as contrasty and might not pop as much as you'd like. And when I say that I'm comparing them against these micro OLED displays on these Xreal Air devices, I really like the image quality on these. So yes, they have a much smaller field of view, but they're also packing a fairly high 1080p resolution, which gives you a pixel per degree of, I think, 41 to 49 depending on how that's calculated, which is pretty high, and it's great for reading text because I have used this for work and I'm able to see text fairly clearly. It's also micro OLEDs, which means it's got extremely high infinite contrast ratio, so content really pops, which is really good for gaming as well as watching movies. One thing though is if you're sitting in a bright room, you do need to use the light shield, but that's easy, it's just an easy clip on. I've not tried the Meta Quest Pro, so I can't really speak about that, but I don't know. It might be a bit better than the Quest 2, but I doubt it'll be as good as these when it comes to image quality for my particular use case. The Apple Vision Pro, on the other hand, now that's interesting because that has a much higher resolution. I think it's about 4K per eye is what I read somewhere. However, that's also over 2 times the field of view. So I think finally when it comes down to it, it might actually end up having a very similar pixels per degree to these Xreal Air. But let's see when they launch. But in theory, that should be pretty comfortable to read text on and to work as well. Now, another differentiating factor between these 5 devices is their dependencies. What I mean by that is the Geodive VR headset, it needs a smartphone to function. Otherwise, it's just an empty shell. Similar to that, the Xreal Air needs a device to connect to it. Otherwise, it's just regular sunglasses, I guess. But with this, the advantage is you can connect a variety of devices, right? You can connect smartphones, tablets, PCs, gaming consoles, so a lot of different things. It's essentially like carrying around a virtual monitor. It needs something for compute and power. The other 3 devices are standalone, the Meta Quest VR headsets as well as the Apple Vision Pro, standalone compute devices. So it needs nothing else and can function completely independently, so that's pretty cool. But again, it depends on your use case. Like, I still know I'm gonna always carry my phone with me. So if I'm carrying my phone anyway, then carrying this additionally seems easy versus carrying one of the bigger, bulkier VR headsets. Anyway, that's on dependencies. On ease of use, which is the next point of discussion, the Geodive VR headset is probably one of the easiest because you just pop the phone in there and you start watching content. It's simple, it's easy. Not much you can do with it, but from what you can do, it's fairly easy. Anyone can get started. The Xreal Air as well is relatively simple. You just plug in the USB cable, other end goes into whatever device you want to mirror, and you're good to go. Now, there are some issues which I talk a little bit more detail of in my earlier video with app compatibility and device compatibility, so you have those issues as well. But on the whole, it's fairly simple to use. Now, these standalone VR headsets, which are the Meta Quest 2, the Meta Quest Pro, and the Apple Vision Pro, those, because they're completely standalone devices, they have a bit of a learning curve. Some might find it easy, whereas some others might find it pretty intimidating and overwhelming. I know for a couple of people, I know they really struggle to use those controllers and to navigate the menu system. The Apple Vision Pro's user interface, at least from what the reviews say, seems very intuitive. It uses eye tracking to select objects and I think a pinch gesture to move around. So it should be really easy to get used to. But again, I can't say till we've actually started. And also, while eye tracking and hand gestures seem okay for most regular usage, I feel for gaming, you still need a controller. You still need the different buttons and functions that come with a controller. I don't think a simple hand gesture would really cut it. But again, it's early days, so let's see what developers come out with. Speaking of developers, the next topic of comparison is ecosystem. Now for things like the GeoDive, which essentially use something like Google Cardboard back in the day, the ecosystem is almost dead, which again I think is really sad, and I talk about that in my earlier video on the GeoDive. But there's hardly any content, apps and games for these kind of headsets anymore. Now the Meta Quest devices, being standalone, need developers to create experiences and games for them. And while there have been some games that have been released for them, it's not what I would call expansive. There's not too many titles available today. Maybe that might change, but the pace at which new titles are being released is not necessarily as fast as I would have wanted it to be. There's an entire PC VR aspect and PS VR aspect of it, where there are a lot of game titles coming out there. So if you combine all of those, yeah, there is excitement in the space, but I think it's still early days for VR and not seen as much content or experiences out for VR yet. Because these Xreal Airs act like a fancy display to your existing PC or mobile content, there already exists a robust ecosystem of stuff you can do, right? Because anything that you can watch on your phone or your laptop or your tablet, you can watch on these glasses. Any game that you play on those devices, you can play on these glasses. So that way it's good, because there already is an established ecosystem for them. I would still like more content and games optimized for these glasses. I've played on with the Nebula VR space and it seems pretty interesting, but there's just not enough content available. So maybe in time that also will grow. To wrap up this comparison, so to speak, I think the GeoDive VR headset is a great entry point. It's a very low cost entry point for anyone who wants to try out VR and get a feel of what that experience is all about. Yes, the image quality is not great. Yes, the functionality is limited, but it's a great starting point. And at what, $15, $16, can't really ask for much more. Now for those that want to essentially watch content but on a larger screen and play games but on a larger screen, as well as have the convenience and portability, I think the Xreal Air and devices like this form factor are a great solution. They're portable, they have great displays. I would like it if the price comes down a bit, but I do think they offer a lot. Now for those that really want to experience VR content, VR gaming, the Meta Quest 2s are a pretty great entry point there as well. They're actually a little cheaper than these, and I think about $250. That's pretty good actually for what they offer, which is a full standalone VR experience with controllers. So yeah, that's a great entry point. For those looking for higher quality pass-through and multiple cameras, eye tracking, hand tracking, etc., the Quest Pro does have it all. Again, I've not used either the Quest Pro nor the Apple Vision Pro, but the Quest Pro has cameras that track your eye, that track your hands. It has full color pass-through. So the hardware tech in it is fairly good. I do wish they went for OLED displays, but I'm sure they have a reason for sticking with LCD. And I think the Quest Pro is about $1,000. It's a big step up from the Quest 2. And I think the Quest 3 is about to release as well soon. So let's see what new enhancements that brings. But the thing is, initially, I thought the Quest Pro is very expensive. It's a big step up, right? From $250 to $1,000. But then there's the Apple Vision Pro, which is a crazy $3,500. Now, I know this is not the consumer version, it's more the developer version. And the consumer version will be cheaper, relatively speaking. Look, I don't feel Apple is justified in charging $3,500, but then again, it's Apple, they don't need to. At that price, they put the absolute bleeding edge of technology in those glasses. So, not glasses, sorry, into their VR headset, even though they don't call it VR, but augmented reality. Starting at this price allows Apple to really push technology to the bleeding edge and putting the best of components in there, the best hardware, the best software, the best processors, the best materials. And it does definitely push the industry forward. So I'm very excited to see what the Vision Pro brings and how that, in a lot of ways, encourages developers to develop for all these other devices out there. I am excited about the post-smartphone world that we are slowly entering into. Still some time away, and until then, I think devices like the Xreal Air are just what I need to expand the capability of a smartphone. Because let's be honest, today's smartphones are pretty powerful, but they're limited by their tech, and something like these glasses do a lot to enhance the functionality of smartphones. But yeah, it's my crazy comparison of the Geodive VR headset, the Xreal Air, the Meta Quest 2 and Pro, and the Apple Vision Pro. It's been quite an experience thinking through the different points and comparing them. I'm glad you stuck with me throughout, and have a good day, and I will catch you in the next one. Procon Grey out.